Gold and Black Live, and Stacy and Kyle join me. We'll hit a little Virginia Tech talk. I want to thank our sponsors, State Farm agent Trent Johnson, trentismyagent.com, and of course Triple X on the hill, but on the level of Purdue tradition, that is, since 1929. John Basham and the folks at Basham Rentals, and of course Hilton Garden Inn. And when tomorrow is a big, I guess when it's tonight or when tomorrow is a big day, we'll stay at HGI tonight. Of course, Christy Kuntz and the folks down on the at Wabash Landing will have another busy weekend. Speaking of busy weekends, I know that by this time in the afternoon we may feel like we've talked ourselves out for the Purdue football, but there is a lot on the line tomorrow. Stacy, Purdue, Virginia Tech, 3:30. What do you think you're going to see?
That's what's interesting about it. We're not really sure. When you look at the kind of caliber of competition that both teams have played the first 2 weeks, I don't think that Purdue's seen a defense like what they're going to see on Saturday. So even though their offense has put up, a lot of points in the first 2 weeks, scoring, more than 30 both games, I think it's going to be a little bit tougher to do something like that. But that's a huge key in the game. Obviously, we talked a lot about on the pregame show, really breaking down specifically, what the challenges are and how Purdue could potentially overcome some of those challenges. So I would say to go listen to the pregame show for really specific stuff.
Yeah.
But for me, that's it. Virginia Tech's offense is okay. They don't really scare you. Obviously, they lost their starting quarterback. That changed everything for them. And the kid they have now is not a great passer and he's a little more mobile. But Purdue's defense is going to have some opportunities, I think, to really create plays and might need to, if Purdue's offense struggles.
Yeah, can Purdue score? That's it. It's a simple question, I think, and the answer is less simple. I think Austin Appleby has to have a good day, more like week 2 than week 1. Certainly, I don't think he's going to be as good as week 2. The competition is a lot better. But for him to be good, other things have to happen. They have to pass protect, which I think Purdue has a good offensive line for run blocking. Probably a little bit more average, I think, for pass blocking. The running backs are going to have to block some, and Purdue's going to have some opportunities, I think, to get the ball down the field. It's just a matter of whether they take advantage of them or not. And if they do, they might win. If they don't, they'll lose.
Yeah, Virginia Tech, in all the talk about its defense, it has been in Bud Foster's tenure, has been susceptible to big plays. I know it's the kangaroo statistic that Ohio State gets 592 yards on them because they're going to the Buckeyes will do that against a lot of folks. But what are the opportunities for Purdue tomorrow? What has to happen for Purdue to move the football consistently?
Are we talking about okay?
Yeah.
They have to do a lot of things right up front, with that offensive line, because of the front that they're expecting to see is something different and what they don't normally see. Virginia Tech's line is going to have, probably if they go to the bare front, they're going to have 3 guys bunched up in the middle and then 2 standing guys out there. So that means Purdue's going to have its tackles uncovered. So they're not going to be able to get double teams, most likely, so they're going to have to win the one-on-ones up front. And they're going to have to win the one-on-ones on the perimeter, like Kyle said as well. If they're going to play a man defense behind that gives you opportunities, but they're difficult opportunities to seize potentially. So I think that it is a real challenge. I think it's a real challenge. Like Kyle said, not only do you have to pass protect, you got to figure out how to find seams blocking for the run game. And if Purdue can't get its run game going, it could be in trouble.
I don't know. Running backs have to block. I don't know if you threw that in there too, but they
you did earlier.
They have to. It's critical. It's critical because Virginia Tech's going to challenge them, and because Purdue hasn't been very good at it. They weren't very good at it in camp, and they weren't very good at it last week, so they're going to be challenged there.
Yeah, and that will always be when you play Virginia Tech, that is something that you're going to have to deal with. The one thing about Virginia Tech that's been so talked about has been special teams, yet over the last several years they really haven't been quite as stout as they had been, certainly in the late 90s and early 2000s. But Purdue has struggled to some extent, certainly kicking the football in both place kicking and punting.
You just don't want to get drilled on special teams. Yeah. I think. Even if Virginia Tech hasn't been great at it over the last 4 or 5 years, it is something that they are historically known for emphasizing. And I would say that they probably have an advantage going into Saturday's game because they're good at it, and because Purdue has had areas, mainly the kicking game, where they have been not so good. I don't know if I agree with putting a freshman punter out there for his first start
Mark,
or
yeah.
whatever you want to call it with a specialist. When, I know Daryl Hazel this week tried to downplay the punter in the punt game because it's really all about who blocks up front. But timing matters, how quickly he gets rid of the football. You know, I don't know. Thomas Meadows is a pretty experienced guy, even if he's struggled a little bit this year. But Joe Shopper's going to have to be good, and if it's a close game, Paul Griggs needs to hit his field goals on what will be a windy day, apparently.
Yeah, it's going to be very windy. Cameron was talking about that here a couple minutes ago, and it's going to be winds maybe 15 to 20 miles an hour by the late afternoon, which could have a big effect on that. I mean, Thomas Meadows is an interesting deal because last year at this time we were talking about Purdue's great kick coverage and the fact that he was, you know, kicking the cover off the ball or at least placing it. What's happened?
What happened? I haven't looked at the numbers. Maybe we should go back and look. I don't think he was as good down the stretch last year.
No, he wasn't.
We've included that in a couple stories, those
Yeah.
specific
I
numbers.
should look up those numbers then.
I
What are
don't
they?
recall
What are they?
I don't recall at the top
The
of my
last
head.
5 games he was under,
Yeah, the last 5 games.
under 40.
In a bunch of our preview coverage, and I think also in our preview magazine, we had included some of that. So, you know, it started to happen last year, and Daryl Hazel talked about how he thought this was brewing, you know, going to Shopper weeks before it even happened. Daryl said on his radio show last night that he saw Shopper kicking him 65 and 70 yards in practice this week. I didn't see that. That might have been before we were there. Possible.
Yeah.
I'm still a little skeptical of, like Kyle said, putting a freshman out there, and a freshman what we've seen in practice hasn't been consistent. But again, we're obviously missing parts of practice when they're punting and that they're charting all of that. Wouldn't you agree? He hasn't been. He was really rough when he first got here, and he has gotten better. But just when you watch, and I'm not a punter, I'm not going to act like I understand it. But you know, when the ball's in the air, it should be spinning a certain way, and it doesn't always spin that way coming off his foot. Maybe it makes it harder to return.
Next week, Stacy, I want you to start tracking every punt.
Get there.
We'll get you up on the lift.
3:15 and.
We'll get you on the
There's
lift.
got to be a GPS way to do that, or
So-
something. You could get a drone, maybe.
Shopper had a
I've almost
marginal
got hit
first week
by
Yeah.
quite a few
of training
times off of
camp.
that.
He
You
struggled.
have to pay attention to that part of practice because
He
you
got-
get hit by, and we're standing far out of bounds.
No, we're making it sound like he was. I mean, he was not good that first
Not
week,
just
but
him.
he got a lot better as it went on. So we'll see. I mean, it sounds like they're going to do it.
Yep.
Sounds like he's going to play.
Yeah.
But you know, Griggs has got to kick his field goals too. He's got to make them.
All right, players to watch in this segment. You guys always do this on the radio show as well, but we did have a question about Dominique Young and going to be a jump ball threat in the red zone. But we'll hit from that standpoint, but then we'll also talk about who you're really going to watch closely for Purdue tomorrow.
Damo's closer to in danger of losing his job
Yeah.
than making a jump ball catch in the end zone, I think. I mean, Bill L. Marshall had 1 catch and 1 drop last week, but I think he's a guy who I think you can get the ball to underneath a little bit or across the middle, and he can make a couple of moves. He made a nice move in practice. I think it was against a scout teamer, it was against Evan Polium, a backup middle linebacker. Made a nice move to spin around him, and actually somebody said to him, "You ain't lying," and I think that was in reference to Bilal saying he felt better the last
Yeah.
couple of days, and he's looked a little bit better. I think he could, you know, Stacy picked him as her sort of pick the click last week, and I thought maybe she was a week early. I think he could have a bigger role here because they need somebody to go across the middle and make some catches in traffic, and he has some of that ability, I think, to sort of contort his body around and use his athleticism to make some catches.
I think you could see that this week from the slot guys, just with the way that the kind of defense that they play. That's one way to beat this. Get the ball out of your hand quickly, take advantage of one of those guys being matched up maybe against a linebacker or, you know, against a nickelback. So that's something to watch for too. I
Okay.
think.
We all know that everybody's going to be watching number 13 tomorrow just because it'll be his first appearance back on the field, and Jalen Robinson. What do you expect to see in terms of Daryl Hazel's been pretty forthcoming about he's going to play half the snaps or close to that, and then we'll see if that happens. What do you expect?
Well, and Daryl did say last night that Jalen would play some defensive end spot as well. So that's different than what we had been told early in the week, you know. So it may not be half the snaps necessarily
Yeah.
rush him if he's playing some at defensive end as well.
Yeah,
But
on the other side.
He's a big, strong guy. I mean, there's no doubt about that, and he's, you know, not that tall, so yes, he can get some good leverage too when he's trying to rush the passer. So I know, talking to him this week, he's obviously really excited to get back out there and stayed really in good condition over the off season. He had to do extra workouts and stuff, so obviously he didn't lose any of that, and he's still a really strong kid. So I think it'll be interesting to see him not just in a pass rush element, but if he is playing that defensive end position, to be able to come up big in the run game. I mean, because I think that's really good to have at that spot, that power to be able to hold up. It'll be interesting to see how much read zone kind of option stuff that Virginia Tech does with that more mobile quarterback. I know when we talked to Andy Bitter, who is the covers Virginia Tech, he had mentioned that might be something when Kyle talked to him this week. So Purdue might see a little bit different kind of approach there too, which from an assignment perspective is going to be very important for those ends, right?
Yeah, they haven't, graded out as well as what you'd like. Talking to Greg Hudson, and we used some of it on our feature on the defense and rush ends on the podcast earlier. They've been at about 70% efficiency on assignments. He wants them at 100% on assignments, and they just haven't. It's hard to sit here and look at it from our perspective and know exactly where they're going wrong. But they have made some plays. Hudson calls them some splash play or flash plays because they have combined for 4 sacks in the first couple of games, which is better, trending better than what it's been recently. But the concern, I think, is some in the running game. Are they executing their assignments correctly? Whether it results in them making the plays or allowing some of their teammates to make plays. And if Jalen can do that better than the players that have been out there, I think he's going to play a lot more.
Yeah. Question.
That might be a reason why he's going to play a little bit of defensive end, too, besides just rush end.
Yeah. Question from Jonathan. Has Dan Monteroso been stuck in the doghouse, and he was a big part of the team last year until he got hurt?
That's not true.
I don't know if that's really true. And he was relatively unheard of prior to the Hail Mary touchdown. Do you expect to see more of him?
Well, last year, by my count, I think I looked back and he played 22 snaps.
32, I think.
32, which there was a reason. He maybe was hurt. I don't even recall if he was hurt last year.
Well, he certainly hasn't. He certainly though hasn't been in the doghouse.
Wasn't. No, I don't.
I mean,
no, yeah. I wouldn't term it
Yeah.
the doghouse. I would just term it that he's not good enough.
Yeah. All right.
Well, I'll tell you
I
though.
don't know how
I think that
blunt I want to be there, but he's just not better than what they have.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just
I think
not.
that's-
So
especially the position he's playing in the slot. I mean, if Anthrop is healthy, they're going to play him there, and they like Posey better because I think he's more consistent, probably a little bit more physical.
he's on the scout team right now. He's not.
No,
even.
he looked really good on the scout team this week,
He's
but
not even in the.
yeah, he's not. He's wearing a different number during practice. He's not in the doghouse though. I mean, I don't think he's done anything to put himself below others, other than the fact that others are better.
And I think he had a good off season. I mean, I kind of chit-chatted with him in training camp at one point. I think he said he added like 8 to 9 pounds of muscle, and I think he had a good, productive off season. It's just from a talent perspective, I just think that there are other guys better right now.
He made some catches though on the scout team this week. Yeah. I mean, maybe he gets a little more confidence with making the one catch, and credit to him too. He played how many snaps, and on one of them he comes in and probably makes the biggest play. One of the biggest plays of the game.
Yeah, if not the biggest. Okay, last slide. Is it a must-win for Purdue tomorrow? How do you view it?
No.
No,
I mean, I don't think you
like
could call.
that.
Yeah, I don't think you could call a game that they're probably not going to win a must-win. Ask me again 1 week from right now. I think that one might be a little closer to the must-win category. But I don't think it's must-win. At some point, if you want to get to 6, I suppose you have to make up for the Marshall game. So if you look at it from that perspective, one of these games somewhere along the way, maybe it's Minnesota. I think that maybe becomes a must-win if you want to get to 6. But no, I think you come out and put on a good show for what will probably be a pretty good crowd, relatively speaking. Maybe you can pick up some confidence. I don't know. I hate moral victories, but maybe you can pick up something from that before what I think will be a big game against Bowling Green next week.
Yeah. You agree?
I actually do.
Yeah. And the reason why I think I'll not say I disagree. I just think that they are in need of a win where somebody really cares about it. Even if you beat Bowling Green, which I know Bowling Green has been impressive certainly last week. you're right. I agree that when you're a 5.5 point or 6.5 point underdog, it's hard to call it a must win. But they need something to turn the ship around and get somebody to notice.
I feel
And
like
that's
every
huge
game is a
opportunity.
must win for where they're at in their program right now. That's what the
Yeah.
term is just what is hard for me, because I feel like, well, shouldn't every game be a must win? I mean, especially for this program where they're at, they need victories
Yeah.
badly.
Yeah.
So, and especially with, like we've talked about, that October Big Ten schedule, you need to get as many right now as you can. So if you can get out of here 2-2 in non-conference, I mean, that's probably best case scenario, I would think, going in. If you're 3-1, dang, you know, you're legitimately looking at potentially a bowl game if you get out of here 3-1. But 2-2, I think, would be a good place to be.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens tomorrow. Your predictions, which will be on the site, they're actually already on the site, at least in terms of Media Mania. You're both thinking Virginia Tech.
20-17. I think it's close. I think Purdue's going to have a chance to win at the end, and we'll see. They have to show me first. I mean, It's been too many times now that they haven't made those plays. So I think before I can pick them in a game like this, they got to show me they can actually do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had Virginia Tech in a close game as well. I think 16-13 maybe. I think Purdue's defense can play well and will play well. I'm just not sure exactly what the offense is going to look like, and so that is kind of where I'm hedging a little bit.
I think Purdue's defense can make them a little bit one-dimensional. I know that the quarterback, Motley, threw for some yards last week, but looking at the highlights, he was throwing. No offense to Peyton Manning, but he was throwing Peyton Manning-type lob balls in that game against Furman.
The one was against Ohio State in
Yeah.
the end zone.
Yeah, and them too. So I think that Purdue has a chance if they can get after him a little bit to maybe cause him to turn the ball over a little.
Well, we will see tomorrow, 3:30, the Boilermakers and Virginia Tech. We will take a short break and bring Brian Newbert in here. I'm not sure about the status of Aiken Adele. Hopefully, if he is going to be able to make up, he has a very busy day on campus, and he was hoping to join us here for the last segment. So we'll stay tuned and hang in there for a couple more minutes, and we'll bring Brian Newbert on for segment 3 of Gold and Black Live.